They want to take your household over. They want to take your everything. It is not until they're faced with um, a narcissist, right, that they discover their own shadow. And that's because the narcissist is like a dark person and they're all in their shadow and they don't have any empathy or very little of it. So you're faced with that contrast that mirrors back the shadow that's within yourself. And that's how integration happens. It can't even happen without the contrast. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, because
Well, a true narcissist basically is emptiness. All right. To them, it's like they don't even exist unless someone else reflects something back to them, like some kind of reaction. They do the poking, you do the reacting, and that lets them know they're alive. That's pretty
hmm,
much what a narcissist only has, a false image that they project onto you.
right,
Like
right.
them, the real them doesn't exist. And that's where we're talking about soul, right? Okay. Well, the word soul is really just means psyche. And the narcissist doesn't really have his own psyche. He doesn't, that means he doesn't have his own psychological process. He doesn't think on his own. What he does is he mimics. All right. He mimics what you said, what someone else said. He memorizes it and then he repeats it. So he's more like a program. He's not a sovereign being. He doesn't have a true personality, a true essence. He only has a persona. But a persona isn't real. A persona is about as real as an actor you see on a movie on the TV screen. So what the narcissist does is he identifies with a person on the movie screen and says, "Oh, that's me," and he identifies with it so hard that he thinks is becoming that character, and then he lives through that character. You see what I'm saying?
What do you think his reasons are to himself for doing that? Like, like we were kind of talking about the depression and the reasons for the depression and everything.
Well, the reason they become depressed, I can answer that, but that's a different answer from the other question. But let me address that first one. The reason why they become depressed is because they can't be happy because they're not authentic. They're like a bottomless hole. Nothing can make them happy because they're feeding something that's fake, which is their persona. The persona is a fake thing, though. So you can give them as much love as you want to, but you're loving a fake persona. You can try to throw parties for them. You can fucking have hold funerals. You're not going to get real emotion, real reciprocity. You ain't going to get none of that because you're dealing with a hologram. You know what I'm saying? It's not real.
Mm,
So how can you gain satisfaction from that? You're not actually doing something for you. You're not, if I love your persona, but I don't love you, you're not getting anything out of that. If
right.
I give to your persona, you're not actually receiving nothing because I'm giving this to a persona, which is not you. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm. Hmm. And it's almost like a kind of insecurity that they must have developed early on, and then as a defense mechanism, they start living out that fake persona, and whoever they get with is supposed to play along with that persona because it helps them forget who they are and they get to play this other person. And so you're kind of a role player in their movie, them being the star, them being the hero archetype. And it isn't until you let up that mirror in front of their
Yeah,
face.
but it's really what they're what they're really doing though is they become you. They identify you. At first they admire you. because you have all the qualities that they wish they had, just like the character on the movie screen. So then they come into your life, they love bomb you, whatever else. But what they really want is your essence, the shit that makes you real, the shit that makes you a real person, your authenticity. This is what they want. So instead of coming into their own authenticity and finding themselves, they think they can take it from you. So what they do is they start to mimic you, and they start to become you, and you start to become them, because they're basically siphoning your energy, siphoning your essence. You see what I'm saying? To become you. They want to take your household over. They want to take your everything. They want everything you have. You see what I'm saying? To themselves. And then when they suck you dry, when they suck fucking dry, they go on without creating this, feeding this false persona. Oh, okay, never mind. I just got your message. Yeah. What the fuck was I saying?
No, they yeah. No,
You threw me off.
they're feeding off you because they're copying you. They're like hijacking your identity somehow. And
Yeah,
you know,
and then
so
they get into this shared fantasy with you. They make you a part of their fantasy, and then it becomes like a shared fantasy. And then they literally, in psychology, it's called colonizing your mind. They literally colonize your mind. So it's like the two become one, and you just kind of fade away, you know?
right. Yeah, and I've experienced that 20 years of it, long time of that bullshit. And it's very traumatic, you know, especially if you're an empathetic person and you're somebody that tries to do the right thing and everything. And you know, and this is why we have all these messaging out here about, you know, don't be empathetic, it's a weakness, don't let people in, you know. And we're starting to become kind of like a nation of hardened
Well,
people.
I have to say something
Everybody's
about that.
hard against each other.
Em- Empathy is not a weakness. Empathy is a strength. Okay, empathy is a big strength. That's not the problem. The problem is the empath just naturally thinks that he always has to sacrifice himself. The empath never really reaches into their shadow. The empath thinks that that's wrong, you know? So it is not until an empath is faced with someone like that, or with suffering or whatever, because it comes in all kinds of forms. It doesn't just come in the form of a narcissist. The only time an empath is really going to reach into that shadow is when they have to. And so that's the problem. A lot of empaths don't have the proper boundaries, right? Because it's okay to be empathetic, but you can also have boundaries at the same time. Unfortunately, though, a lot of their boundaries were possibly crossed when they were little, you know, so they were never taught that they should have boundaries. So what happens is they're empathetic without boundaries, and that's the problem. But empathy is powerful. Empathy is a strength. And you should never say to yourself, oh, I'm going to be hard now because fuck being empathetic. That's what the narcissist wants you to feel. But that's how the narcissist feels. So you don't want to
Yeah.
do that. That's when you become him. You want to remain empathetic, but you got to learn to have boundaries. And that's what I had to learn.
Now these kids that you see running around the grocery store acting crazy, their mom and dads won't correct them. These little kids are just little hills on wheels running around. Do you think these type of folks grow up to be narcissists and shit?
Sometimes, yes. I mean, I can't say for sure because I don't know if someone intervened in their life or if there's someone else in their life that guides them in the right direction. But I would definitely say that when you're not taught boundaries in that sense on the opposite side, right? You have to have boundaries when it comes to people coming into your space and what they do to you, right? but you also have to have boundaries when it comes to what you do, right? So when you don't teach a child to have boundaries, that they can't just walk up to a kid and slap them, or act out to get a candy when they don't want it and scream at the top of their lungs. You got to teach them boundaries too. So yeah, I would say that spoiled children who are never told no most certainly grow into the typical um they have this like never want to grow up syndrome, Peter Pan syndrome. Like they're young forever because they don't want to be accountable. They don't want to be responsible. They're entitled. They think they should always get whatever they want because they never were taught that sometimes you get told no. You can't just have a hissy fit when you don't get your way. So if you're not taught boundaries in that way, that definitely can lead to narcissism. Anyway, though, since we're on live now or whatever, or recording, I would like to bring up something, and this is going to be addressed to Joel, my
Joe
favorite
Davis.
boy.
Okay, boy, you hear what's going on, boy?
That's my favorite ugly boy.
Hey, Joe.
And now let me stop.
What's
He
up
not
with
ugly.
Joe, man?
I just got that from a song. That's all. Because there's this song here. I'm getting sidetracked, but there's this song by Skunk and Nancy, and it's called "Ugly Boy." And she basically talking about the ugliest boy is where the girls will show. And so she's like in the back seat and shit with this dude, and he's just like this kind of super freak or some shit. So I was making a reference to that song, but anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here.
Mm-hmm.
Joel, I don't know. I feel like, no, I'm not gonna say I feel like, because that's got nothing to do with it. I think that maybe, possibly, Joel is not quite understanding what I have been saying when it comes to duality and non-duality. So I would like to explain that real quick. When I say duality, I mean two things can be true at the same time, but it's one whole reality, right? So I would like to read something here that will break it down really good, I think, where he may actually understand what the hell I'm saying. Because I feel like he just doesn't understand what I'm saying. And maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see. Anyway, this is my own thoughts. I just wanted to, put it in writing so I can read it and make sure I don't forget any damn thing. So as a mystic / idealist, I don't have to deny duality. Okay. In fact, most mature forms of idealism and mysticism integrate duality rather than reject it. The key is understanding what duality represents and how consciousness relates to it. Duality as contrast, not conflict.
Say that again.
Mystical or idealist view, duality as contrast, not conflict. I mean, yes, it seems like a conflict, but it's really just a contrast that we learn from. And so, yeah, it seems like a conflict, but it's supposed to lead to integration. But I'm going to explain that. Let me just finish reading that.
Gotcha.
From a mystical or idealist view, duality, like light, dark, good, evil, male, female, etc., it's not an error in creation. It's the contrast that allows consciousness to recognize itself. Just like I explained earlier, for the empaths to recognize their own shadow, they have to kind of be faced with it externally sometimes. You see what I'm saying? Without shadow, light wouldn't be perceptible. Without separation, unity wouldn't be meaningful. So duality coexists within the same field of consciousness. It's a polarity, not a battle. In my Lucifer frequency model sense, you could say duality is how frequency modulates itself into form. Contrast is what makes resonance and pattern possible. So it's an expression and it can express itself in both of those ways. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So here, let's talk about the mystical integration. Mystics don't deny duality. They transcend identification with one pole or the other. They can hold both sides in awareness simultaneously, like I've been saying, without labeling one as truth and the other as illusion. Illusion, I mean, not illusion. That's why mystics. That's my German, y'all. I'm trying here. All right, let me get back here. So, and then I can't see fucking shit either, so that don't make it any better. Hold up. I gotta put my finger on it and follow it along. Shut the hell up, Scott. I'm old and dumb, huh? God damn. That's why mystics. Shut up.
A dumb non-dualist.
Don't make me laugh. God damn it, Scott. Hold up. Now I got tears in my eyes too. Thanks a lot. Now I really can't see shit. That's why mystics speak of. They're so goofy, man. They're gonna laugh at us for being so goofy. They're not even gonna take us serious. Stop it, Scott. Grow the fuck up. That's why mystics.
Robin Hood. No, Peter Pan syndrome.
Come on, Scott. I'm trying to read this. Stop
All right,
it.
you go right. Go
real,
ahead.
though,
I'm
stop.
gonna say shit.
God damn, I couldn't have never sat next to your ass in class. Hold up. I didn't lost this shit. Wait a minute. You're so fucking stupid, Scott.
You are all off your you're all off your game. How does it feel?
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so mystics don't deny duality. They transcend identification with one pole or the other. They can hold both sides in awareness simultaneously without labeling one as truth and the other as illusion. That's why mystics speak of the coincidence of opposites, or why Hermeticism says all truths are but half truths and all paradoxes may be reconciled. So this points to a deeper unity beneath duality. We're saying it points to that, right? We're making a logical inference here. And we're not rejecting it, but an awareness. It's just an awareness that both poles arise from the same source. And then I went into a example of how light splits itself into different colors, right? Splits through a prism into different colors. And so you can perceive the colors separately, but in reality, they all come from the same source, which is one stream of light, right? So just as light splits through a prism, consciousness splits its own unity into contrast so that it can experience itself. So this is what we call being consciousness being its own light, being self-luminous. That's why I'm comparing it to the Lucifer frequency, because Lucifer means phosphorus in Latin, and phosphorus is self-illuminating. And this is what we mean by that. And so when we talked about empaths and narcissisms earlier, I was using that as an example of how consciousness does that through contrast. An empath only feels empathy and never really reaches into their shadow, right? Which causes them to not really put up boundaries. And so when you're faced with your own shadow through the the mirror that's being held up to you, like a narcissist, you're kind of forced to see that within yourself. And all of us have the potential to be monsters or angels. You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying that in a metaphorical sense. I don't believe in monsters and angels, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean? We all have the potential to be light or dark, evil or good, whatever you want to call it. That potential is in all of us. The point is integration, just like Carl Jung said. And sometimes, not sometimes, but all the time, in order to become aware of these two aspects within ourselves, we have to be faced with contrast. You know what I'm saying? This is how we become self-aware. Like, I didn't know that I can do certain things. I didn't know that I could do certain things until I was faced with some of my darkest moments. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
That's
All
when I
meaning is
realized
derived.
that's when that's when I realized I'm not just this, you know, innocent little angel that loves everything in divine beauty and shit. You know what I'm saying? Flower power, roses, and you know what I'm saying? Because that would got me no motherfucking where. What do you think makes you ambitious so you can succeed? Or what do you think makes you resilient to survive? That's your shadow. Those things are your shadow.
Yeah, and meta consciousness could not be possible without duality, because you have to have something to be conscious of. Like, you have to have an observer split, a subject object split, in order to have some kind of perception of something. You don't just perceive, you know, if nothing's there. There has to be a canvas, to for the artist to create, it's his picture. So really, it's necessary for anything, for any kind of meaning. That's part of information. Information is all about distinctions. That's what information is. Meaningful information is when one thing, like zeros can mean no and ones can mean yeses. That's information. But information it can only live within a dualistic framework. That's the only way information is going to come about, is through a dualistic framework. But everything dissolves into a non-dual universe.
It's just like if you have a book in front of you that's written in Japanese, right? You can't read Japanese, and that book is not going to become meaningful to you until you learn Japanese. Simple as that. So my last point about this is, so in terms of my model, it's like saying that duality is how the Lucifer frequency mirrors itself, right? Or consciousness. That's how it mirrors itself. So the mature stance is the mature stance is that a mystic doesn't deny duality. The immature mystic tries to escape it, though, and that's what a narcissist is. A narcissist tries to escape that duality. The mature and so while the narcissist mirrors the shadow back to the empath, the empath mirrors back to the narcissist reality. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. And that's a great point, because I've been going over this with somebody in a chat who they keep on thinking that I'm denying duality. And they keep saying, no, but duality is real. It's this and that. And I'm saying, I keep saying, I understand it's real. I say it's real, but well, how can you be a non-dualist if you say also duality? And I keep trying to explain how, duality isn't a fact of conflict. It's a fact of contrast. It's pointing to contrast, and it all happens within the same reality, in a non-dual reality, as a contrast, as a way of relations. It's the way consciousness relates to itself.
We experience duality and non-duality every fucking day, all the time.
And it's real.
When you're in love with someone and you're perfectly aligned with them and you feel that oneness, that's non-duality. When you start fighting and bickering and there's conflict, That's that contrast, and you experience the duality of it. We experience duality and non-duality all the time. And it's the purpose of it is integration, is balance,
Mm-hmm.
to
And
return to wholeness. That's where these sayings come from, return to wholeness, return to wholeness. And that's what it is. You're trying to integrate the two parts.
and
They're not two parts, they're just two aspects existing at the same time. And it's just to uh teach us how to
that's right.
integrate those parts.
They're perspectives. You can integrate the
Yeah.
perspectives, and
So
reality itself, nature seems to be moving and selecting for cooperation and oneness. And it seems like narcissism is one of those things that causes entropy within societies. It's a breakdown. It's a way of breaking away from unity and cooperation and fostering
yeah,
some
because
sort of
narcissism is
unhealthy, unbalanced selfishness,
yeah, because narcissism is self-destructive.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's what it is. I mean, uh it is. I mean, it is.
Yeah. The greater consciousness system, like as Tom Campbell points out, is always evolving towards more and more unity and oneness. That's how he puts it. Because he says, obviously, within a system, if you've got chaos, you don't have coherent information. You lose information through entropy and chaos and disorder. But when you have cooperation, you get meaning, you get meaningful information that can cause evolution over time. And so this is the whole point of unification, is for the system of reality to actually evolve towards a more ordered system. And
Right.
when we
But I
start
want to make
breaking up, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to make clear what we mean with that, because it may sound confusing. Again, we're not saying duality doesn't exist or
Right.
non-duality exists over duality or whatever. What we're saying is, for example, with the narcissist example, narcissism is duality without non-duality. It's the split without integration. So the narcissist sense of self depends on contrast, me versus you, superior versus inferior. That's all he has, right? There's never
Hmm.
cooperation, there's never integration. Their consciousness orbits polarity but refuses synthesis, meaning it never harmonizes the opposites into unity. That's why with a narcissist, you can't win for fucking losing. They externalize shadow instead of internalizing it for transformation. So, yes, narcissism embodies duality frozen in conflict, not duality flowing towards balance. It's contrast without complement. Okay, that word is hard for me. Complementarity,
Yes. There you go.
complementarity,
Yep.
and entropy as the decay of coherence, right? That's what happens. In my terms, in LFM terms, consciousness equals frequency mass times energy. When a frequency loses coherence, meaning it no longer resonates in self-reflective harmony, it collapses and then entropy rises. Narcissism does exactly that. It rejects reflection, which is the mirror of the other. It refuses to observe itself as part of the whole. It creates dissonance that breaks resonance. So, yeah, narcissism produces entropy in the collective consciousness. It's a localized collapse of coherence, energy trapped in self reference without reflecting, which leads to social decay. So, there's no, reflection, inner self, what you call it, uh,
Awareness.
self, examination, self reflection. And
Hmm.
so that's what happened. So non-duality doesn't mean no contrast. It means contrast understood as part of the same wave form that talks about what you were saying earlier, the peaks and valleys of a single oscillation, like your heartbeat, right? It goes
Mm-hmm.
up, down, up, down. And that's what how you could imagine it. Integration happens when consciousness realizes I am both the wave and the ocean. In that realization, duality doesn't disappear, it transcends conflict. Harmony emerges because all polarities become seen as expressions of one field. And that's what we mean with there is a unified field. uh I could say what Joel is saying, well, it's not unified though, because I think differently or I have a different experience. You're right. It's not unified in your perception, but the realities is that it still all comes from the same source. You see what I'm saying? That's what we're saying. We're saying that it comes from the same source, even though you may not perceive it that way
Mm-hmm.
because you don't believe that, or you think that you're separate or whatever, or you're doing what I just explained. You're refusing to see yourself as a part of the whole, you know. And then the idealist correction, the antidote isn't to destroy duality, it's to restore resonance, to bring reflection, humility, and empathy back into the field. That's the reintroduction of non-duality, the remembrance that every other is part of the same frequency you are. So that's basically what it is. Like, you have to see yourself as a part of the whole, or anyone else. Once you can transcend that separate way of thinking, you restore the unity by remembering that, hey, we're all in this together. We all come from the same source.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, you're talking about something I brought up in my last video called transconceptual awareness, which is a fancy term, sounds really fancy,
Right, right,
but it's called transconceptual awareness. And what it means is it's a recognition that concepts are pointers, not containers of truth. And how this kind of relates to what you're saying is because this modern term, um, you know, theory and consciousness studies use this term too, because it captures how dualistic expressions can be functionally true while failing to encompass totality, like the holistic part, right? So the term ineffable, right, captures the limitation of language, like I was saying, but transconceptual
right,
expressions offers the solution to that. So it's just a shift in perspective.
right. Exactly.
And
That's
people,
all it is. It's literally
it's
just
all
a
it
shift
is.
in perspective.
That's all it really is. That's it. That was my whole point, that I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, is that
So
the
the
only
material is
real
one perspective,
mm-hmm,
and the mental is another perspective, but they coexist. My body is
correct.
one thing, but my mind is always at the same time. I'm not two separate things because I have a body and a mind.
Right. Like, you know, I think one of the questions that's always
You
presented, I
can
think,
be, you can be, it can be, it can seem that way though. I'm sorry, but it can seem that way though. Like, if you're not in harmony, if your mind is not in harmony with your body, or your body is not in harmony with your mind, whichever way you want to put it. But if I was an addict, for example, and my mind says that's not good for you, but my body says I want this, you're an addict. So that's the same thing. That's the same thing we were talking about. You're no longer in harmony with your mind, and your body is seemingly doing something separate from what your mind wants to do. But that doesn't mean that, you know, it's not one whole thing. Like, your mind is not ever separate from your body. It's just a matter of perspective. You can
right.
only overcome a physical addiction with your will. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, one of the questions that was presented to us, and one that you know, it was so hard trying to get these answers in because, you know, especially when we have like on these live streams, we have so many people talking at the same time, and there's like a million questions
Right.
going
It
up
gets
at the
lost.
same time, and we're trying to answer every question, but they all come at, you know. But one of them that I noted was, can science provide evidence that if experience is ontologically primary, but you say that consciousness is subjective, then how is it, what kind of evidence can you produce that experience is not psychologically private? Because you're saying this greater mind is public. You're saying the greater mind is everyone. And I try to get in there to answer that because it seems like a good question from where they're sitting. I can see why they'd answer it. But the thing is that, you know, I can show that experience is transpersonal, like it's a shared lawful structure. I can show that. And the answer is this way. It's like I can show it not directly, but there are
Right.
converging lines of evidence. Like there's a theoretical motivation that supports this view, even if I can't really prove it. But what I'm saying is we have to define the word. So like whenever I talk, and I tried to keep saying this, what I mean by ontologically primary is to say that experience is ontologically primary. It means that conscious experience is the fundamental reality, and matter, space, and time are appearances or expressions within that experiential field. And this is a metaphysical claim, but an empirical one. But we can ask, does the scientific evidence fit better with consciousness as a derivative of matter? Or does it fit better with matter as an appearance within consciousness? And this is where my reasoning kind of begins. And I was trying to break this down. It's like there's empirical tensions within materialism. Like, you know, we have the hard problem of consciousness. We have the quantum measurement problem. You know, physical states remain indeterminate until observed, which suggests that, you know, experiencing is somehow involved in the manifestation of physical reality. The hard problem of consciousness, you know, these things, all, you know, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, but basically science already itself um, uses the laws of experience. For example, it's called objectivity. We call something objective precisely when multiple subjects or people can report the same experience under the same conditions. And this regularity that I'm talking about,
Exactly.
that experience aligns across observers, implies that consciousness is not solipsistic, as they keep saying. It's lawfully structured and it's shared. So empirically, we already work within what could be called a shared
Right. We
experiential
already
field.
know that.
It's already an experience field because we're all sharing in it. And the universe just intersects at that lawful experience. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not
If we
really
can
sure
all
what's
observe if we can all observe objective reality, then we're obviously sharing a shared
a field.
experience. Obviously,
We're in the
a
field.
field. Right.
Exactly. That's
How
right.
the
We're
fuck
all in the
else is
field.
that? How the fuck else we're gonna do that? And that's what I was trying to say to Joel. Like, it's just, I don't know. That's, to me, it's just logical. I don't see how that's a leap because we're already doing that. You don't even have to. You don't even have to be spiritual or a mystic or anything like that. You know, because in all honesty, science, okay, modern science is increasingly pointing towards that consciousness um is the most coherent explanation of reality. Like, that's really all we got to go by, and science is heavily leaning towards that already.
Right. And the reason why non-dualism can't be quote unquote proven, idealism can't be quote unquote proven, is because, you know, um, science is limited. You know, science by design is methodologically materialist. So it measures third person observables, but consciousness is first person reality. So science, the only thing
Right,
it
and
can
that's
do is
when
correlate. It can only model or infer,
right,
but it
and that
can't directly measure.
my question to that would be, okay, first of all, I had to, look up what that exactly means. So To say experience is ontologically primary means everything that exists is in or of consciousness, rather than consciousness being something that arises from matter. So
Right.
yeah, okay. What I was gonna say is, damn it. Wait a second. What was I going? I have a question. Okay, so to say that anything at all could exist without consciousness, what's the fucking point of that? Because you wouldn't be here to experience this. The collective consciousness wouldn't be here to witness it. So
Right.
what's the point of even talking about that? So all we can
Right.
go by is experience. Because if I were to say some stupid shit like that, then why the fuck are we studying science? Why are we even talking about materialism? Why are we talking about anything? You know what I'm saying? It don't make
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah. There's a really strange artifact about our consciousness and the universe. We're able to make sense of the universe. Why are we able to make sense of the universe and not just be like every other animal? Like, or why can't we, or actually they make sense of the universe too. I can't even say that. Why would creatures evolve to understand the universe? Like, what's the point of that? It's kind of like congruent with the idea that there's a greater mind that demodulates consciousness, like a relation, rather than anything else. Like, it just seems like if evolution is a blind process, if it's just a blind
Yeah.
process, and our brain is just the output or the consequence of just nature doing blind processing, then how is it that we're able to make sense of the world and make truth claims? You know what I'm saying? If it's blind, how do we know that we're making truth claims? I'm not saying we're not, but how do you know that for sure if you also within your worldview say that, oh, we're just the product of blind random mutations? You know, how do you make sense of the world when you've evolved blindly? And so my thing is to say we didn't evolve blindly, that there was a guiding mind behind all of this stuff. Now, you don't have to call it
I mean,
God, doesn't have to be, but it just seems like a mind would make more sense.
to me, it just honestly, uh, it's it's a meaningless concept to even ask that question. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
if something exists unperceived, unexperienced, and unknowable, is the same thing as saying something exists that will never, in any possible sense, appear in my awareness. So why are we even talking about it? We wouldn't be talking about it if I wasn't aware.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And not only are you aware, you're aware of things that make sense. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if what I'm saying is
Yeah,
making any sense, but what I'm saying is if the universe, like, if not for consciousness, there would be no point. Like you say, there's nothing to talk about because there's no observer.
exactly.
There's no observer. So in a
So who
sense,
cares? So who cares?
epistemically, nothing
What's the
exists.
point? Right. So what are we doing? Like we might as well. It's that's almost like nihilism in a way.
Right. It,
There's
it,
just
it really is.
there's no point left after that.
And I'm not saying that people don't have valid reasons, because maybe they don't have all the information, or they're not familiar with these ways of looking at things in a different perspective. That's why we're bringing this information and why we share our own personal understandings, you know. But if you really think about it and you're introduced to these concepts, I mean, for me and you, it just seems like a no-brainer, you know. It just seems like a no-brainer that non-duality is really the ontological truth. I mean, just by straight inference. Um, and I just want to hear if and when we ask, then what else could there be? What other option are we looking at? That's not a bad question. Like, I think Joel also told you that whenever you say stuff like, well, what is your view? What you were asking is, well, if idealism and non-dualism has all these problems, then what other view can be the alternative? And
Yeah, I'm
he's
just
like, I
saying.
don't know.
I'm saying you gotta bring. I'm saying you gotta bring something to the fucking table. We're not just gonna run around and say I don't know, because we do know some things, you know.
Yeah,
Because if we just
yeah,
don't know nothing, if we just don't know absolutely fucking nothing, you know what I'm saying? If not, it's all meaningless. That's nihilism to me. Because what are we doing here talking then? You know, why are we having discussions? Why do we do
well,
debate? Why do we look up information? Why do we study science? Why do we do any of that if we're just gonna say I don't know?
right. Like, the mystic Sadhguru, one of the things he's always saying is that, I don't know is the first step into learning. Like he'll say,
Yeah,
for people who say that I don't know, they are better than people who claim to know when they really don't know. But at least when you say you don't know, now you can start to try to learn and explore. And that's his whole point as a mystic, because he started off with the humble admission, I don't know anything. And then from there, he went
yeah,
out and he just
but
observed
that's what
nature.
I
He
was trying.
started learning. Now he does know things.
That's what. But yeah, exactly, and that's what I was trying to tell Joel. That's fine, because I also used to identify as an agnostic, you know, and I just
Hmm.
said I don't fucking know. But there comes a point in time where you learn, and then you do know stuff. Then do know things. So, to me, that's just a lack of accountability right there. Because you do know things. And if you want to say we don't know anything really because we don't know, because everything could exist without consciousness, well, then you're just going back to a meaningless concept. And then what's the point of anything? And then, to me, that's like nihilism. That's like nihilistic thinking. Because at that point, nothing means nothing, and nothing is everything's point. That's just pointless.
Well, see,
I
this
don't.
is
I don't.
the thing is, like a person that we talk to, like maybe a Joel or anybody else, that say, well, I don't know. That's why I'm here talking. I mean, at least I'm here engaging with you. Isn't that trying to know? And, my response is always, well, now you do know. Now you can't say you don't know, because now you know what my position really is. So now let's take the next step. Since you know what the positions are, the next step is to compare. Let's do an analysis. Let's compare idealism to the other metaphysical viewpoints that may exist. Let's talk about unknown stuff, and let's compare. Why not just say it's all unknown stuff that explains the world? Let's compare that to idealism. Let's have that conversation. Once we have that conversation, now you know about that. So you actually do build your knowledge. But people, I notice there's a lot of people. I'm not saying
Why do we
Joel
keep?
falls into this
But then
category.
why do we? But then, but I mean, Joel, for example, why do he ends up asking the same questions, no matter how it's explained, and at the end of it, he says, "Well, I don't understand, but I've explained it to you," and then he says that I'm making a leap and that I'm just filling a gap. No, I'm not just filling a gap. Filling a gap is just, to me, is like, if I don't know something, I just fucking make up some shit and say, okay, this must be it. But that's not exactly what I'm doing. And I think he kind of simplified that way too much. That's not exactly what I'm doing. I'm not just filling the gap with some imaginary thing I came up with. I
Right.
actually am following a coherent logic, that's actually backed up by um a lot of things, actually.
Philosophy,
And so
science, a lot. Yeah.
on top of that, I got my own experience to go with it, which, uh, I'll grant him my experience could be completely skewed, right? Based on my own perspective or perception. So I gave him that too. You could only believe my story, because you weren't a witness to it, so I
Hmm.
get that too. But at the same time, is it a coincidence that my experiences perfectly aligns with what quantum entanglement says? Is it a coincidence that other psychic experiences I have that involve smelling things like disease? Is it a coincidence that that coincides with quantum tunneling? You know,
Hmm.
and he was saying, yeah, it might be a coincidence. And I'm like, really? Now that's a leap. You know,
Yeah,
that's a
because
freaking leap.
didn't we do a whole show where science tested for quantum tunneling in as far as
Yeah.
experiencing of smells and stuff? Isn't that pretty much proven now?
Yeah, but
How
then
is it
he
a
moved the
leap?
goalpost. But then he moved the goalpost when I said that. And he said basically, well, how do I know it's idealism that explains it? So now you move the goalpost. That's why I said, does it really fucking matter?
Hmm.
We're talking about how reality functions. We're talking about what is real. What you ultimately call it, does that really matter?
Right. I look at it kind of similar to this situation when I'm dealing with Joel. Um, it's kind of like, like if you're dealing with, like one time I was talking to this dude, where was he from? He's from the Middle East or somewhere. He didn't really know anything about evolution a lot at all, right? He wasn't even familiar. He just kind of thought he knew what it was, and it was basically that
Yeah.
man came from monkeys, and yet monkeys still exist. So how do you explain that? And then when I go to explain it, he's like, I don't understand. So you're just so I'll just conclude you're just making a gap argument. You don't understand how
Right.
your hypothesis works. You don't understand how humans come from monkeys, therefore evolution. That's just a gap in your belief. But you have no evidence to back it up. And I'm like, well, there is evidence. And he goes like, well, present it. It's like, I can't present that. I can point you to where the studies. And he's like, yeah, but if you have to present studies and all this, I just don't trust it. I don't trust you. I don't trust your sources. So I think that you're wrong. And it's like, that's kind of like how it is talking to folks like Joel. It's like they don't understand something, therefore you're making a gap argument. It's like, maybe you should try to understand more of what I'm talking about. Maybe kind of look at
So
my
if I
references
say
and shit.
gravity exists, even though I can't directly measure gravity, but I can make a logical inference, is that a leap? Is that
Not
filling in a
not
gap?
not really, but according to that logic, it would be,
I
because
mean,
to his
according to
logic,
that logic, it would be, right?
yep, yeah, it's like, if you don't understand it, like I can understand if he would say, just ask, how do I know I'm not just making a leap by saying non-dualism? Um, but to just say you're making a gap argument isn't really, like, now you have to, now
It's
he's.
not really true. That's just not
So
true,
this is
really.
why this is exactly why I say, you know what, this kind of person we need to debate. We don't need to discuss. We need to debate, because that's what they're really trying to do. So what I suggest, and Joel, if you're listening, um, let's
Are we
debate.
live or
Yeah,
recording?
we're
Oh, we're recording.
recording, but I'm just saying that
But you're gonna post it. I get it.
yeah, I'll post it and he'll see it, and I'll say, because I would say, since you made the positive claim that non-dualism is a leap of logic, let's debate that. I want you to show me how idealism is a leap of logic. Okay? Or show Sophia, whoever you want to debate about it. We can put a
And I
debate
want to,
together.
if you don't,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go ahead. So I was just gonna read this last thing to him, and then I do gotta bounce.
Yeah.
Um, all the kids are home, and I gotta get some things together before I go to work. But I wanted to read this. This is gonna be directly to Joel. About that very thing, and then he'll know where I'm coming from and what my premise is, in case he does want to have a debate or whatever. He's probably
Okay.
gonna mop the floor with me, because his English is and grammar is so much better and stuff. But I'm gonna be using tools to help me. Anyway, uh what I want to talk about is the way that I said that about my mystical experiences align with things like quantum tunneling and things like that. So I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
read this real quick. Um, it's not a leap of faith, but a philosophical inference grounded in observation. I'm noticing that the same principles underlying quantum phenomena also describe what mystics have experienced for millennia: interconnectedness, non-locality, and the the permeability of boundaries.
Yeah.
Permeability.
Yeah. Permeability. Yep.
Um, le- okay, so let's break that down. I'm not saying that quantum physics proves mysticism, saying that the experiential features of mystical states, boundary dissolution, instantaneous knowing, unity beyond space and time, align with what quantum theory already demonstrates at the fundamental level of reality. So that's not a leap, it's a pattern recognition, okay? Based on logical coherence. And that's what I was trying to explain to Joel. I'm not just making a leap, I'm recognizing a pattern here, right? So yeah,
Right.
you could call it a coincidental pattern, but I beg to differ on that. So quantum phenomena that correlate. We got quantum tunneling. In tunneling, a particle passes through a barrier. It shouldn't, but it shouldn't based on classical physics, right? This reflects, and what's her name? Sabine Hausfeld talks about that extensively. This reflects how, so you can, as a reference, look that up, what that's really about, which I know you know, Scott. This reflects
Mm-hmm.
how consciousness in mystical states sometimes penetrates boundaries of perception, and the apparent barrier between subject and object becomes transparent or like dissolves. Yeah, right? Like there is no barrier. So both points to the non-absolute, both of those things point to the non-absoluteness of separation. See what I'm saying? Quantum
Yep.
entanglement, and that's another thing I experience. When particles are entangled, they share one state across any distance. And the reason I say I experienced that is because of, for example, what happened with my dad, the example that I told him about that whole DMT experience while my dad was dying. And it was like I
Mm-hmm.
experienced his death.
Yep.
That would be perfectly described by quantum entanglement. And so it says, when particles are entangled, they share one state across any distance, measuring one instantly defines the other. Mystics describe precisely that. Talking about people like me, we have described stuff like that before there was such a thing as quantum entanglement, right? Um,
Yep.
all things are one mind, knowing one is knowing all. Entanglement implies reality is not composed of independent parts, but relational wholes. Exactly how consciousness experiences unity. So my inference is very rational. If consciousness and matter both display non-local interconnection and boundary transcending behavior, it's logical to infer a common source, an underlying field of consciousness, for example. So it's logical and it's not really a mystical leap. It's not the same as saying, oh, I believe in a God in the sky. Oh, I believe that, whatever Christians believe. But I did agree with him. There can be Christian idealists because you could technically fit idealism into some forms of Christianity. But like I told him, I don't associate with Christianity. I do see his point, but that's not what I'm doing. And I want to make sure that he understands the distinction. A leap is believing in something without reason. An inference is drawing the simplest explanation from a consistent pattern or consistent patterns. So my reasoning says quantum mechanics equals objective map of non-local unity. Mystical experience equals subjective encounter with non-local unity. Therefore, the simplest explanation, which is Occam's razor, is that both point to the same ontological ground viewed from different perspectives. the inner and outer faces of one reality, like Carl Jung talks about. And in my LFM terms, you would say consciousness equals um well, I'm not going to go into that whole formula because I don't want to constantly repeat that. But yeah, so quantum tunneling reflects consciousness transcending potential barriers, energy, frequency, modulation. Entanglement reflects the coherence of one unified frequency expressing itself through multiple localizations. And mystical unity is consciousness directly perceiving its own frequency field without interference from dualistic filters. All are expressions of the same self-reflective dynamic. And that's pretty much just the Lucifer frequency at different scales in my model, right? So
Right.
how to phrase it succinctly to really drive home the point to Joel. When I speak of my mystical experiences aligning with quantum phenomena like tunneling or entanglement, I'm not making a mystical leap. I'm making a logical inference. Both point to the same principle. Boundaries are illusions within a unified field. Quantum physics shows this mathematically. Mysticism experiences it directly. So that's the only difference. Quantum physics, they explain it with mathematics, and a mystic experiences it directly. That's how we're building the bridge here. You know what I'm saying? Because I believe he asked how we're doing that. Well, that's how. The two perspectives simply reveal different sides of the same underlying consciousness. And that's pretty much all I can say about that. We're
All right,
talking about the
Joel.
same thing here. What quantum physics? Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Joel. So Joel, you heard the claim. You've seen the argument. So he should be able to be he should understand where you're coming from and have enough information right there to make a coherent argument against it, that you're making a leap of logic somewhere if he can. So let's see what he says.
Yes, Joel, bring it on. No, let me
Bring it on, boy. No,
don't whoop
no, we're not calling you a
don't whoop my ass
narcissist, by
too
the
bad,
way.
Joel.
Yeah, and we're not trying to
No,
call you a
no,
narcissist.
not at all. Don't that had nothing to do with it. That was just brought up for example to explain explain what we were
Narcissist.
explaining. So don't think that.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys,
I got to
and
roll.
dudes and dudettes and whoever's watching, I gotta take my ass to work because now I'm a single bitch with no money. Now let me stop. But yeah, I will.
You're a
I will
loser
see
like
you,
me now.
Yes, I'm a fucking loser. Got rid of the man who was providing for me. Ain't that a shame? But it
You're a
is what it is.
narcissist.
It is what it is. I'm a narcissist. I'm a
Yeah.
fuck you fucking narcissist. Anyway, I gotta go, man. Peace out.
Peace. Y'all be good.
Everything.